Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. Um, One thing this morning when I got up, I walked over here, the birds were just going crazy. And after winter, I haven't heard that yet up in the Black Hills. It's still a little, it'll be in a couple weeks, but it sure was a nice sound of spring. It was just lovely to hear. So today's talk is about community, and I'm going to talk about 20 minutes, and then we'll pass the talking piece around, and you can share what you like. So community, when I think of that, I think of the word communion. I'm just going to talk about, I think, the positive aspects of community. I think we can all probably think of some negative ones, but I think there's an awful lot of positive ones. Community, it's like a three-part word. Calm, unity. Calm, the C-O-M means to be together, to be with, kind of implies plurality. Unit or uni is one, wholeness, singularity, and then the suffix E means to be like, to be as. So you could translate community as, many together as one. You have to think, how can many be together as one? What brings that about? And there's got to be some kind of a common glue or thread to connect a community, some kind of a shared interest, a shared belief system, a shared purpose, even shared living space. Where I live up in the hills, we have a community. It's kind of rural, and we have a community kind of around my house, maybe 15 houses or more. And we're pretty different people in lots of ways. But because of our situation, we need to work together to keep the water running, and sometimes the power goes out or the roads get closed and won't be open for a couple of days. And so we need to work together and keep things running. And so, we have a community on that basis, just keeping our neighborhood functioning. In our in our modern world, in our world today, it seems like community is fraying a little bit, I mean, at least from what I read in the news, you get that impression. And I kind of wonder, what's the common thread that we lost somewhere? What was that, and what is it now? For our situation, we're in a Sangha. A Sangha is a Sanskrit word or a Pali word. Looked it up and it said it was both. That means community, and it means association. It means group. Originally, it was used in a not a very secular way. It just meant you'd say like a Sangha of geese for a flock of geese, or a Sangha of deer for a herd of deer. For us, of course, it's come to mean like our Buddhist family. And it's one of the three treasures, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And usually it's considered to be the most important of the three treasures. I read somewhere in one of Mayazumi Roshi's writings where he said that. Somebody asked him, and he said, Sangha is the most important treasure. But way back in time of the Buddha, in the Samyutta Nikaya, there's a verse where Ananda goes and sits down beside the Buddha, and he says, half this holy life, Lord, is having good and noble friends, associating with the good, companionship with the good. And the Buddha says, do not say that, Ananda. Do not say that, Ananda. The whole of this holy life is this friendship, association, and companionship with the good. So the Buddha's, way back then is making Sangha as the most important, the foundations of practice, the real support for our whole spiritual practice. Originally, Sangha was, in the time of the Buddha, was only considered to be people who had had the same realization as the Buddha. In other words, people who are considered to be enlightened or arhats. There's a story in one of the sutras where after the Buddha died, they got together to start recording some of his teachings and stuff, as much as they could remember since he wasn't there anymore. And all the Sangha went into a great big cave, and Ananda had to stay outside because he wasn't considered a Sangha member yet. And then they had to relent on that a little bit because his memory was so much better than anybody else's. So they let him in. And of course, eventually he became a Sangha member. He's our second ancestor. In Philip Kaplow's book, Three Pillars of Zen, he talks about Sangha being people who had taken Jukai. They had changed it from enlightened. I think he still had that when he started, and he changed it to anyone who took Jukai was in the Sangha. In our group up in Rapid City, we just pretty much, we use it very broadly. Anyone that comes and sits with us, even just occasionally, or anyone that participates, this is our Sangha members. I read somewhere, or possibly I imagined this because I can't remember where I read it, but someone had said that, with all the violence in the world that we commit against each other and all the, the massive environmental crisis that it seems we're heading towards nonstop, that Sangha should be expanded even more, to include not just Buddhists, but all people. And not just people, but all animals, and not just animals, but plants, fungi, rocks, stones, mountains, everything, the whole cosmos, because that's our real Sangha, our real home, family. That certainly would be a goal of my spiritual path, would be able to see everything that way. But, how could you work with that? How would you work with that? Another resonance with Sangha that I have is just the sound of the word Sangha. I think of the Spanish word sangre, blood. Blood has strong connotations of family, bloodlines. Blood is thicker than water. When we take Jukai, we fill out that Kechamaya lineage chart, and you put in all the names, the Buddha's names on the top, and then there's Mahakasapya, and then there's Ananda, and then all the Indian ancestors, and then the Chinese ancestors, and then the Japanese ancestors, and then our American ancestors, our own teachers, and then your own name goes at the bottom. And there's a red line that goes through every one of those, a bloodline. And then it goes all the way back up to the top. And it's almost like a circulation chart, because you could say the Buddha's like the brain up there, and then there's like this kind of red circle that looks like a heart lung system or something, and then it goes the red line. But anyway, that's our spiritual Sangha, beyond space and time, really, that we're all connected with, that you're joining when you take Jukai. In earlier times, for most of human history, people lived in small groups rather than, cities of 20 million or something like that. And we evolved in that, and community was extremely important in those small groups, whether it was family groups, tribal groups, small villages. Community generally held about the highest value there was, at least the highest social value, because it gave so many benefits to the members who were in a community. Being exiled from a community was usually considered a fate worse than death, because in that kind of situation, it could easily lead to death, and it would be kind of a lonely, ignoble death. You wouldn't, there'd be no one there to mourn you, no one to cover up your bones. You'd just be alone, and that was really considered a horrible fate. But, a community offered just massive survival advantages for the members. First one being protection. Having being in a group of people, you have 10 or 20 more sets of eyes to just scan the environment for danger, whatever that might be, snakes or large animals, or even other tribes people. There also seemed to be a very strong emphasis in communities on sharing. That was a primary value. Community members took care of each other, and if for instance, you didn't have food and you were in a community, you could reasonably expect someone to share food with you if they had it. Also, share medicine, share clothing, share living space. Community members took care of each other like family members. That's how they survived. That's how humans survived. Also, it gave you access to a social environment. We're very social animals, and being in a community, you could have friends, you could have lovers, you could have spouses, all that stuff, which is, one of the primary joys of life is other people and dealing with other people. And then, another really important thing was communities save knowledge over generations and generations and generations and teach it to their members as they're growing up. So, being in a community, you wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Humans were on North America for maybe 10, 12,000 years before they invented the bow and arrow. It took that long for all the pieces to be in place, you know. So once it was invented, they taught it to all their children. I mean, it spread quickly and everyone used it, and everyone after that used it, you know, because communities can gather up and save generations worth of knowledge and transmit it to people. That's, you know, our technological, you know, all the stuff we're doing on the internet right now, Zoom and all that is a result of that. You know, it's amazing. It's a gift, you know. So community, you know, really supported individuals. That's what it does. Community supports individuals. In our situation, you know, we're in a Sangha, and our community doesn't really support our physical existence, but it supports our spiritual life. You know, it's the foundation of our spiritual life. When I think of, say, you know, I've been a member of this community for 20 years or a little more, and you know, when I think about what are the values here, what's the good thing, the first thing that comes to me is access to teachers. You know, Roshi and Roshi. You know, they're like my spiritual parents, really. If they weren't here, I probably wouldn't be here either. And you just don't get that. I mean, Zen comes alive if you can work with a teacher. It really, really turns it into something different than if you're just sitting by yourself and reading koans on your own. So having teachers and being able to work with them is, you know, a massive benefit. But also just having a schedule, you know, just having a schedule on a calendar where you have events planned. You know, we sit Tuesday nights, we sit Saturday mornings, we have retreats throughout the year, and then there's other special things going on. And you can put that down on the calendar. Having that schedule really helps me keep on track, because if I don't have that, you know, there's always obligations. You know, I'm in other groups, other things going on, and you get pulled away from this easily, very easily. And having a schedule that you can count on and you can plan ahead is, you know, does a lot, adds backbone to my practice anyway. It keeps me on track. You know, another thing is like the facility we've got here is wonderful. You know, I mean, it's absolutely great. You know, we have Zendo, you just walk in, sit down. Cushions are there. And we have this meeting room. We have the computer hookups and everything, the kitchens, the bathrooms, you know, take a shower, places to sleep, and the beautiful grounds. That's a treasure, really a treasure. You know, in Rapid City, the first place I started sitting with, it was at a lady's house named Francine Campone. She was really the one who started the Laughing Tea Bowl. And we built a Zendo in her basement. It was a very nice Zendo. We made sliding shoji doors, you know, with the paper in them and stuff. And it was nice, but she was a member of Denver Zen Center, and eventually she sold her house and moved down to Denver to be closer to that group. And we lost our Zendo. So probably for the last 25 years, we've been sitting from place to place to place. I mean, we sat in our various members' living rooms, sat in a couple church basements, we've sat in a couple different yoga studios, we sat in a barn, we sat in a karate dojo. Right now we're renting space in a church that's been converted to a daycare center, and we pay $200 a month to use it on Sunday mornings. And that works good. It's a good space, but when we go there, we have to lift up the rugs and move all the furniture out of the way, and then go get all our zabutons and set everything up and set the altar up. And then we also use Zoom, so we got to set all that up, and it works. It's a good space, but then we got to fold it all back up and put it away. It's just a lot of extra work, and we would love to have a permanent place. And then probably the most important benefit of being in a Sangha is just all you guys, you know, to have friends, people you know, those good and noble companions that are also doing this practice is priceless, you know. Just to have people that understand what you're doing and understand what this practice is. It's just not something that is that well known in our culture now, to where you can have much of a conversation with people that aren't really knowledgeable about it. So, you know, the Sangha is a great support. I mean, a great support for a spiritual practice. So there's just all kinds of benefits. And when we talk, maybe, you know, you can think of some other ones, because I'm sure I didn't cover them all. But I also want to say one other thing is there's benefits of a Sangha or a group, any community like that, and there's also costs. And the costs are important to realize, because if the costs aren't paid, the community will just fall apart. And being in a community, it's kind of a mutual thing. Like, in what I was talking about, a tribal group, if you want someone to be there to share food with you, you have to be willing to share food with someone else. It's a community, any kind of community, Sangha or anything, is kind of a mutual aid organization. Everybody has to contribute, and so everyone can take out. If only one or two people are contributing and everyone else is just taking the benefits, the community will just fall apart eventually. Socially, we do that by paying taxes. Most groups that you're in, there's some sort of membership fee which covers financial costs, but the real cost is just participation and sharing and being involved, showing up for things, and doing, making contributions, whatever you can. And it's really important to realize that. And the reason I bring it up is several of the other groups I'm in, it just seems to be that is getting to be, from people that I talk to, they say, it used to be people would just jump in and do stuff, and now they want to just pay their dues, show up, and go home, and that's it. And the group starts just kind of falling apart because of that. There's various reasons they give for that. I don't think anyone really knows, but anyway, it is important. Community is it's a mutual thing. We work for the benefit of ourselves by helping the community. So that's about all I got to say. I guess, Roshi, would you like to add anything?
Hakuju, that was very nice. Summary of community. See, I don't need this. I'm talking to myself. Okay. Just add a few things. One is actually the Sangha originally was those who were ordained as monks. And then I think Capel maybe included Jukai to expand it a little bit. But in the meal gatha that we chanted at lunch today before we ate, we say that we eat this food with our teachers, parents, nation, and all sentient beings. And one of my Dharma sisters changed the nation to community. So we eat this food with our teachers, parents, community, and all sentient beings. And somehow that resonates with me more than nation. And actually, when we were chanting it today, I was thinking we ought to change that, because the nation is a bit too big, and particularly our nation, which is so divided right now. It doesn't really give one a warm, cozy feeling that saying community kind of does, where people look out for each other. And I think that's very true. And and I heard Maizumi Roshi say that how important Sangha was as a treasure. And Sangha is usually characterized as harmony, which means people getting along together, but also having a common aspiration. And that's what I like about Zen Sanghas, is everybody has a harmonious aspiration to practice together, to support each other in our practice. And I'm reminded of one other thing when we call this Maitreya Abbey. And Maitreya literally is the future, the Buddha who's to come, the Buddha of the future. But I think it was Thich Nhat Hanh who said that he believes that Maitreya is actually going to be the Sangha, not a individual who's going to liberate all beings in the future, but that the Sangha is going to be doing that. And the Sangha is honorable for its harmony. Yeah. So I think you did a good job of setting the ground. We just added a few wrinkles. Let's see if Roshi has anything she wants to.
Hello, everyone at home and here. Just happy to be with you today. I just loved your talk. I mean, Hakuju. Everything you said resonated with me so much, and it's exactly what we are doing at the Zen Center and Maitreya Abbey. Building community, because especially these days we see like the importance of building community as our refuge. Before, I spent a lot of time building the community, which I love also, what Hakuyu said, the community of rocks, trees, rabbits, cats, horses, goats. I really love that community too. Wow. And I want to add, and the sky that supports all of that. We are so connected with such big skies here in Colorado, here where we are. And we build this community, and the sky is always there. It's there, so big, so open, holding us together. And another important part of the community, I would say, is the food. And I want to say that after the Sangha circle we had last week, I felt so much love for the Sangha that allowed me to speak of my shadow. And the thing what happens with the shadow, when you speak about it, it just disappears. So instead of shadow, I just have a lot of love for the community. And like the movie Water for Chocolate or something like that she put all her love in the food that she's making, which is chocolate, and people get enchanted when they tried her chocolate. I felt like that, making the food for the upcoming retreat. Like that, putting all that love in the food that is going to nourish us to be able to sustain and practice during this retreat and future retreats. That's all. And for me too, the Sangha is the most important treasure. For me, the Sangha is the Buddha and the Dharma together. Thank you.
Yeah, I think probably everyone knows that I have been teaching at the university meditation for credit for going on 20 years now, University of New Mexico in Taos. And yeah, it used to be that when I'd ask how many people have meditated when I first started 20 years ago, it was pretty common for a few people to have meditated and a lot to have never meditated. And now when I ask how many people have ever practiced meditation, almost everybody raises their hand. But out of that, the most common thing that I hear by far is, I used to meditate. And I used to meditate is something that I run across again and again and again because many people hear about meditation, it sounds sensible to them, they learn it somehow, they start it up, they keep it going for a year, maybe a few years, because it's interesting to them. But then sooner or later it peters away, something happens. They go on a trip, they have visitors, they get sick, they move house, something like that, something disrupts it, and that's the end of that. And it is entirely the norm that I encounter. And not only at the university, but I teach meditation in writing groups and other settings, and I hear it all the time. People don't keep people even they start meditating and they see the benefits, and despite that, it somehow falls away. So I think the thing that's lacking for people is Sangha, because the world out there is not meditating. I used to go to Zen Center of Los Angeles, and which was in the very crowded barrio section of Los Angeles, and I'd sit with, I don't know how many people were there, 30 or 40 people, and we'd have this intensive 5-day a week-long session, and it was just such a immersive and profound experience. And I'd come out and everybody's doing all this other stuff, and I'd stop into a gas station and to get myself a snack or something, and I'd look at the newspaper headlines, and I think the newspaper headline should say, "Shishin just finished at Zen Center of Los Angeles." That should be the news, but that's not what people are doing out there. They're all doing other stuff, and it all just pulls away at our ability to keep practice going if we don't have a community. I thoroughly agree that having a community is the most important part of keeping a practice together, because we're communal beings, and we have to be around other people who are doing it, or we're just not going to keep it up. Sooner or later, something's going to get in the way. I think in all my years of teaching meditation in all sorts of settings, I'm talking about thousands of people I've one way or another instructed in meditation. I think I've met 5 or 6 people who learned to meditate, thought it was sensible, and kept it up for 20 years on their own. I mean, a relative handful of people. Almost nobody can do it, So as important as the other factors are, Buddha and Dharma, Dharma is freely available. Books, internet. A teacher is a wonderful thing to have, and to really go far in practice, I think we need a teacher. But to even get established in practice and keep it up over years, I think Sangha is the thing. If you don't have Sangha, you got nothing. Most people can't do it. Most people just are not going to keep it up over years. You hit these flat spots, you hit these plateaus, you have setbacks, stuff comes up that makes you think, there's these times in practice, I think we all know them, where we think, oh, am I going backwards? I'm getting worse. You need other people around you who are doing it to help reinforce you in times like that, keep you interested and excited. It strikes me there's a lot of talk about division in our country now, and one of the things, I think the main thing that's fallen away is that sense of Sangha, or community, of being one community. Maybe like Shishin Roshi says, maybe it's just gotten too big. I don't know, but the current administration that's in, people say they got a majority vote. Well, it's not really true, because the majority of people didn't vote. Most people in the country didn't vote. We did not have a majority of people in this country who voted. So a plurality of people voted, these people, but the other people didn't participate. So there's that community sense, or that we're all in it together. And we've got this thing especially in America, of individualism versus community, right? As though they're two different things. And we see that division a lot. We see it being played out in government. We should have small government so we can have more individualism, and et cetera, et cetera. But, we hear a lot about this dualistic thinking, and it can be hard to pin down what we mean by dualistic thinking. But, and we think when we get into it, we think the individual is one thing and the government or the community is another thing, right? But it just strikes me as so odd. It's so obvious that that's not the case. It's like, here's the striker from the bell I use at home, right? Is this end different from that end? It's completely different from that end. It's got one end, it's got another end. This end isn't anything like that end, right? They're completely individualistic. They have their own personalities. They can do whatever they want. You know, one can ring the bell and it sounds good because it's fuzzy, and the other, if it rings the bell, it's going to be harsh. You know, they've got different characteristics. But there's only one striker, right? You know, so multiplicity and unity are not necessarily separate things. They're different ways of looking at the same thing. You know, so anyway, I think I agree with Thich Nhat Hanh, especially that in the West, where we are so individualistic, that I run into people who can't quite handle being guided by a teacher, but are part of a. Actually, many communities have these. You know, many kind of peripheral people who come in for sesshin and things like that, and aren't necessarily close to the teachers, but they keep practicing because of the community. So great. I find people who may not want to take on that teacher-student relationship, but still participate and still grow in their practice because of the community. If you really want to grow, you want to work with the teacher, but there's always those people, right? But almost nobody grows in their practice if they don't have the community. It's just the most important thing. So thank you all. That's all I got to say.